Hey guys, this is Arsh from FTC Don't Blink, and today we're joined by two of my very good friends from North Carolina. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Sid from Team 9548, Highly Combustible.
Hi, I'm Ben from 8300, the Pyro Eagles.
Hi, I'm Timothy from 5064 Aperture Sounds.
Yep, and these have been some very successful teams from North Carolina, and today we're going to be going over kind of like their season recap and touching base upon a lot of different concepts that could be useful early, mid, or late season, depending on what you take away from this video. So I really hope you guys learn a lot, as these three teams are probably one of the most experienced for this season since their state championship is now over. Um, and with the cancellation of Worlds, that's probably going to be the last thing they play unless they play like MTI or any of the off-season events to keep a lookout for. So, with that being said, we can get started with today's video. So, uh, just a first general question before we get started is, how's your season been so far? So, awards or rankings. How you guys think you did like overall this season?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so overall, I'm really happy where we placed robot-wise.
Mm-hmm.
In the majority of our competitions, actually, I think all of the competitions we participated in, we were either first or second um, ranked team. So we called for states really early this season at our first qualifier, which gave us a lot more breathing room than we normally had, which allowed us to do a lot more iteration during competition season, which last season and seasons prior to that we didn't really have that choice because we can't really disassemble our whole robot
Yeah.
if I don't qual. So um, So awards wise, we mostly focus on control because that's usually the highlight of our robot is our software. And I'm happy that in at our state competition and our in our last qualifier, we got the control award at both of those. But at our first qualifier, they actually moved us up to innovate for our
Awesome.
software implementation.
Nice.
So
So really successful season. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're also super happy with this season. We got a world record, which was probably like the highlight of my FTC experience at least. I joined right after we won Worlds, which I should have joined earlier. But we had a lot of fun, and I think it went really well. Like Ben said, I think I was super happy with the performance this year. I think last year we were really competitive at like a state level, but I think this year we made like that jump to like we're pretty competitive at a national level. Obviously, there's some better teams, but we're to the point where I think we can put out a really good robot and compete with any given team. And not always winning, but being competitive.
Yeah, for sure.
It just so happened that the rest of the state also made that jump at the same time. Um, we were still able to do really well at our competitions. I think we won every competition we went to before states when like four teams or something five teams actually came up with insane OPRs. I think there were five within like the top 12 or something from that one competition at one point. Um, but yeah, I think we did really well. I mean, it sucks there's no worlds, but
Yeah.
we're gonna look into doing some of the off-season competitions just so we can get a little bit more experience,
Awesome.
and hopefully do something in person. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, and just some context before Sid goes ahead for those of you who don't know. North Carolina just like I don't know, just blew up all of a sudden because we saw some really, really, really competitive teams that we haven't seen before. And I mean, the state as a whole, like very few slots for teams that are like I believe at one point there were 6 or 7 teams in the top 20 from North Carolina. Correct me if I'm wrong, but um, they were like really going at it, and the state only gets a few slots at most from like prior seasons. Again, no Worlds this year, so it doesn't really affect anything. But uh, like if there was Worlds, it would be like a complete bloodbath. So it's interesting to see that jump in a state competition wise. Yep. So Sid, go ahead.
Yeah, so echoing what both Ben and Timothy said, I was super proud of what our team managed to accomplish this season, even though it was like obviously super different from like any other year. This is my like fourth the only one where I've had to work out in my garage for 90% of the season, which is definitely interesting. But I think we made the most of it. We ended up doing really strong on awards, which was something I was super proud of. So, sorry, I just dropped my calculator. We ended up doing really strong on awards in our first and second quals, which one of them was the same one where Ben qualified. We got second and then first in Spire, which was something
Awesome.
we were really proud of. And yeah.
Nice. That's really great to hear. So, like today, we're kind of bringing a lot of diversity. You know, we have a lot of technical things from 5064 and 8300, and then obviously Sid is bringing the non-technical power here. So, with that being said, we can get started with some more insight from these teams. So, I guess first question to you, Timothy. Um, just curious about like, you know, going into the season, what was kind of like your game design? You know, what do you do like when you kind of like think about the game and are getting ready to prep for the season? And like, how's your robot evolved over the season so far? And if there's one change that you could make on your robot, what would it be? I think that's an important question.
Yeah. So, um, one change. I'm gonna start with the one change.
Yeah.
'Cause I think if there's one change we could make, it'd be going same side and
Yeah.
rolling intake. Because that's two changes. But we would, if we were talking about if we made words, pretty definitely that we are gonna think about going for a rolling ring intake, even before we saw tectonics and brainstem, who are obviously just like ridiculous. But we knew that if we could actually pull off like closed cycling, then that'd be totally insane, and we'd be one of the best teams in the world. Going into the season, we started out. We normally take a bit of a break. We worked a lot longer in the off season than we normally do. Normally, we just say once the season's done, we're just gonna take a break from robotics for a while. Individual people still do stuff, but it's like kind of just giving everyone some time to like decompress and
Yeah.
ready to go at the beginning of the next season. But last year we started switching to Gobota, so we wanted to have a Gobota drivetrain. So we designed that. We also added odometry in the off season. So we did a lot this off season. And then once we got the game, we kind of just sat down and brainstormed a bunch of ideas. We ended up we had some pretty wild ideas. At one point, we were thinking about doing like a spindexer turret, but we decided that simple is probably better because we can make a pretty simple design really fast and then just keep on iterating on that. And yeah, we kind of just picked a simple design that we know would be able to do everything we wanted to well, and then we just kept on working to that till we got something we're really proud of.
Yeah, and I've noticed that that's like a trend you see with a lot of the aperture robots, and it's I think something that's very understated is that you know, a very robust design or something that's super complicated isn't really necessary in most cases. And a lot of times, having something that's much simpler and grounded is, you know, better in terms of like for iteration, improving things throughout the season, and general facets such as that. So I guess one more question before you know we kind of go and break down into different things is: do you want to talk about like the different subsystems on your robot, and also maybe touch upon drivers practice a bit?
Yeah, so we started out actually designing our intake first and our shooter at around the same time, just to get. We were basically just doing prototypes. We wanted to see, can we launch rings at the flywheel? Yes, we could. Could we launch them accurately? Yes, we could. And then just what intake system works the best for us. And
Mm-hmm.
after we had those, we hadn't really thought a ton about transfer. I think you can see the thing
Yeah.
on screen sharing here. A diagram of our transfer. So what we ended up doing was being like, our intake can launch rings pretty far. We could probably use a similar concept for our transfer, which we ended up doing. We had a back roller, and then we just added that little flap so that we can, so that rings can stack and we still maintain control of them no matter how many are in the magazine. Um, and then yeah, after we had that down, we did just a bunch of iteration. We didn't do that much iteration on our shooter. It worked pretty well. We have like one idea of something we could improve. There's our shooter is 3D printed and has some tread, and there's a small gap in the tread which we think might make it a little inaccurate. So we're gonna change that. But outside of that, most of the iteration went into transfer and intake, just to make sure things fall into our transfer consistently, and then also um, they don't like get janked anyway. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the driver practice. Driver practice has been really great, not just because it makes a driver a lot more experienced because it's their first year driving, um, but also because it can kind of reveal any major flaws we have with our robot. If you just run your
Yeah.
robot like once before competition and say it's done, that's hard. But we were able to like see a bunch of the problems we had and then fix them as we went on.
So I guess one thing that I noticed was, especially I think for your state championships, you switched to like an automated sequence for your power shots and a few more optimizations, I believe. So what made you like go for those over, just practicing more? And where do you think teams should like decide where the like that thin line is where automation can actually, be better than a lot more drivers practice or time invested?
Yeah, so our automation actually just came from we've been working on an odometry code throughout the season, and
Hmm.
once we got it to a point where we could hit the power shots pretty consistently, obviously, just with the way they're designed, there's a ton of fluctuation.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, but we basically just got to a point where our odometry was good enough where if we lined up properly, we could shoot better automated than we could with a driver. So I think that line, it's hard to tell, but again, we did a bunch of driver practice and consistently we could, as long as we weren't just like running dry, we could make our high goals pretty consistently, but we kept on having problems with our power shots. So we were like, so that was just like, you notice these problems as you practice a lot.
Yeah.
And I think if you have the chance to automate it like we did with power shots, that'll help a lot.
Yep. Makes sense. All right, let's move on to 8300 now. And we haven't really talked about I personally haven't seen 8300 being talked about a lot. I know 5064 was on Fun, and then Sid was on the recent help desk episode, which you should definitely check out. Um, but 8300 I think is a very underrated team, and they've really been good throughout the season and super consistent as well. So Ben, do you just want to like give us a walkthrough of your season and kind of like the cool software implementation things that you have on your robot, general things like that.
Okay, yeah. So let's get started with that. So early in the season, actually no, preseason, we decided that we wanted to have a drivetrain built that we would use all season. This was probably the best decision we made, just getting that out of the way and having something going day one. Um, and actually, this picture is prior to our odometry pods too. But so this is the drivetrain that I went with. It's a dead axle mecanum drivetrain. Um, and it was very reliable throughout the season. We only had a couple of times where we had to tighten some things and stuff like that. So that was a great thing for us, was having that built. Um, and then we then started to work on a ramp style intake, as you can see here in
Mm-hmm.
this clip. This intake was weird because um, the way that we did the angle, um, the intake had to scrape across the floor, so it made our driving very inefficient. So eventually we came to find the double roller design, which we kind of stole from looking at Aperture Science Lab. Um, and so how this works is the front roller and the bottom roller are tied together with a round belt that's inverted 180 degrees on itself. So the two are spinning in opposite directions.
So
And then
that's the infinity belt, like where,
yes,
yeah.
yes. And then those just feed into our hopper. And the way the hopper is designed, it makes the collection a lot more reliable. Which I've seen a lot of teams, such as your own team, do as well. um, so also, like Aperture Science, we have automated power shots, and this is actually something that hasn't been shown to the public yet, but we experimented a lot with doing shooting while strafing with our automated power shot. So so it's
Oh.
very fast. Yeah. With the automation there. And so yeah, and here's another clip for autonomous, like that. So all of this uses a system called a linear quadratic regulator, which sounds like a very big, scary word, but I promise it's not. It's a good way to think about it is it's just like PID, but with some optimization stuff built into it. So that means all of our autonomous movements going to be really consistent and work not quite 100% of the time, but it was really close to it.
So I guess a few questions. So like, if you were to give one tip to new and upcoming teams or rookie teams for especially for software, what would you suggest they start looking into first? Would it be computer vision, or would it be something like motion control and getting your movements to different places refined?
So what I would work on doing is learning how stuff like first I would start with trying to figure out how PID works. I would try to implement it yourself, get that working. But then for your first season, I would go straight into looking into Roadrunner. Roadrunner is a really powerful tool, and I think the majority of teams should use it, unless you have the capability of building something better. Um, but then so after that, and you learn more how Roadrunner does its things, I think is then when you should start going into implementing your own motion control algorithms. Because there's still a lot to learn with going with Roadrunner. It's not just like what a complete solution. You still have to tune it and implement it and everything like that.
Yeah.
But once
No, no.
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're good.
No, you can go. You can go.
I was just gonna say, so a lot of teams, like have this misconception that you need odometry or you need like all these systems. So, um, and teams that even if they know like some basis of odometry, do you think it's smart for especially rookie teams to just jump into looking into complex systems such as these, or do you think it's better for them to first experiment with what they have and then look into different things?
So so a lot of teams will say so. On one hand, it is on one hand the best thing in FTC is to have a really reliable, um, very consistent robot. But then on the other hand, I don't think teams should be discouraged from trying to do
Yeah.
something out of their comfort zone. I definitely think it was incredibly beneficial for us to jump into all the way through to a linear quadratic regulator and get that working and then going through all the difficulties along the way. Um, so while definitely if you're like a first year team and you have no experience whatsoever, I would say start with the basics. But if you feel like you can do it, I'd say go for it. Um, so yeah, that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, no, yep, that makes perfect sense. And I think the last question. So, similar to what I asked Timothy, did you guys do any drivers practice before your state competitions?
Yeah, yes. I would say we probably did a minimum of 3 hours of driver practice per week.
That seems like a
But
pretty good number, actually.
and that's early season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. During qualification, not qualification, during like competition season. So that was from late January to late February, basically. That was closer to 5 or 6 hours a week.
Hmm.
So our driver didn't like me very much during that time, but I think it was worth it in the end.
Yeah. Oh, actually, yeah. One last question. So, for especially this season's game, autonomous wise, what strategy do you think teams should be like top teams should be implementing? So I noticed in like your video you had, and I've experimented with this too. It's called like a lot of teams are calling it collat, where it hits two power shots with one ring right over there. But I know a lot of other teams are doing bounce back as well. Do you think like what strategy do you think would be beneficial in the long run, or what team should start with first?
I think the most reliable Okay. So, are you talking about the like the super high level teams from now on? Or are you talking about?
I would say teams that like have like the starter stack, two wobble autos, like
Yeah. Okay.
done and
So
consistent.
yeah, I would say make sure teams that get the starting stack, make sure you're getting your 7 rings first. Because I know there's a lot of teams that just get the 6th one.
Hmm.
Um, and then so um, I would say then go to working on trying to get the bounce backs. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't try to do the collateral bounce back because the rings can bounce weirdly.
Hmm.
In addition to that, you can have weird things happen with um, like accidentally scoring major penalties a lot
Yeah.
easier.
I think.
With shooting each power shot individually is a lot easier.
Yep. I think I think the only like a really good benefit of collab is that you're more likely to hit like a power shot versus hitting all three power shots, in regular auto because of how finicky the power shots actually are. So I guess it's just depending on what the team really wants in the long run or how safe they want to be. Because I think, a six high goal autonomous and then, shooting your shot at two power shots, but making sure you still get at least one is much safer than probably just doing three power shots. We definitely experienced that in our like most recent event for like this meet. Like in practice, we had our three power shot auto and bounce back stuff working pretty well in terms of like the power shots actually hitting. But then like in one or two matches out of the six, it tended to miss one of the power shots, which seems like pretty minuscule, but in the long run, it definitely counts. So.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and with that being said, the last person here, Sid. All right, so Sid's definitely won a lot of awards throughout, especially early season, with a lot of the. I think the highlight of Sid's portfolio and stuff is like the general formatting and how he kind of organized everything. It's more unorthodox, and I think it's definitely helped him. So Sid, you want to like talk a bit more about that and some other stuff in your season so far?
Yeah, sure. So, here you can see our team is super proud of what we did this season. So, throughout our qualifiers, I didn't update this for states because we obviously didn't need to submit a portfolio again. But we got a lot of awards, which we were super proud of. And the things that we focused on in our portfolio really showed up to the judges. So, connect and design were both things that we really wanted to show off. And we thought our portfolio was pretty good. The judges seemed to think similarly. Uh, had, it had a it didn't have an insane amount of content, but in my opinion, the way it was presented is super important for awards, especially with the portfolio. They're gonna read through the whole thing, so you need to show off your best things in the way that you want the judges to see them. So, one of our probably my favorite slide was like this brainstorm slide, which was a big event that we hosted throughout the season. So, we were able to reach out to a lot of teams and connect with a lot of people, and we really were able to play that up through our portfolio and our judging, which helped us a lot in the end.
So I know your portfolio. Yeah. So I know your portfolio has been. What's up?
Sorry, sorry.
Okay. I was gonna say I know your portfolio has been talked a bit in the past. So I just kind of wanted to ask more questions specifically about the content. So like, how are you deciding like what aspects to put into the portfolio, especially with something like the technicalities of your robot or with design, and then for your outreach, how exactly do you break that up? I know a lot of teams do like the combo of like professional outreach where they connect to their local community and then they do like mentoring and stuff like that. So just wanted to hear your thought process behind that.
Yeah, definitely. So the two main things going in, as soon as we looked at the portfolio, we were like, okay, the two main things we want to focus on are iteration and what awards we specifically want to win. So we there were in the portfolio requirements in the game manual, it talks a lot about like how showing your process is super important, and that's just a general first thing. Like your engineering process is what will like attract the judges, and then backing that up with your content. So we wanted to talk about our design a lot. So we have um, 4 slides here about our design process and how we ended up with the mechanisms on our robot, basically. And we kind of split it up by mechanism here, which we thought was pretty effective since it let them. They like to talk about a shooter a lot since we had a side shooter, which was pretty unique. So we were able to highlight that in 1 slide and talk about it, which they liked. And then for the outreach question, so we actually split it up a little differently than probably what most teams would have done, because most teams probably have more consistent events, I would say, like a consistent scale, but we felt that we had 2 pretty big events in the these 2 slides that we've highlighted separately. So we really wanted to bring those out and show the judges, and then the rest of our outreach is kind of not marginalized, but it's not the focus of our portfolio because we really wanted to bring out what we've done in those 2 events specifically.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Yep. So I think we can wrap this up here. I guess before we go, one final tip from each of you, if you want to give like one final tip for rookie teams, general teams, or like people who are competing in the season, what would that be? And you can just go ahead.
Okay, so one thing I would say to everybody is make sure that you're honest between sub teams with how long things are gonna take. So if you're on mechanical and like you tell your programming that your drivetrain's gonna be done in 3 days, but it's been 21 days since the last time you said that, they're not gonna be happy with you. But they're not gonna be that upset if you tell them that honestly it's gonna take 20 or so days to get this working. Be honest with that. That allows them. That allows the other sub team to go spend the other time working on things asynchronously, and you're gonna be a lot more productive. And that's not just programming mechanical. That's everything revolving in one thing. You need everything to work. And I'm gonna throw another one in there. With software, test everything.
Yeah.
If you know how to write unit tests in Java, I know there's a couple teams that do this. Make tests for every single method that returns something. Every single one has a test, even if it's just like adding numbers together. Make a test for it. Okay? Do it. Your life's gonna be better. Also use GitHub.
So we got 3 awesome tips from Ben. Let's go on to Timothy here. All right, Timothy, do you have it?
Okay.
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
go next. This is gonna be a very aperture response, but it's all about reliability. Ben touched on this. If you score, it's better to have a decent robot that will score the same amount of points every single time than one that can score 10, 100 one match. That's random.
Yeah.
But just especially like remote, it matters a ton because you're. I mean, obviously your scores are just what you do. So you want to. It's better to shoot for a really consistent thing than shoot super high and fail 90% of the time. You want to build something really good that works a lot of the time, and especially in Payson, alliance captains are going to do scouting, and yes, they'll see like yeah, you do really well some matches, but if an alliance captain sees that you contribute nothing half of your matches, they're not going to pick you.
Yeah.
That's such a big gamble that they'd rather just take a team that they know what they're going to get from and just be really good. So if you can, I mean, I'm not saying don't try new things, like obviously, but I think Ben talked about this. Get something that you think you can definitely do working really well, and then try and add on that. And if you add on it and you genuinely think this is not going to work consistently, it's fine. Stuff fails. Just
Yeah.
forget about it, and just make sure you have something that's not going to mess up your entire robot. That was, I think, honestly, the biggest improvement for us was also do driver practice. You saw, I think it was like a December competition. We went from a high score of like 300 to 400 in like a month. That was mostly driver practice, but our OPR got better. because we were able to just get rid of some of the little issues that we had throughout
For sure.
and just keep on iterating.
Okay, so 3 more tips from Timothy. And now moving on to Sid. Sid, do you want to finish off with 3 more tips?
Yeah, I'll give 3 more. So, I'll echo what Timothy said about keeping it simple and focusing on what you want, but from a non-technical perspective. So with your awards, before you ever go into the judging room, since I know a lot of people are gonna be having their competitions now, like their judged competitions now. Before you ever go into the judging room, you should know what you want from the judges. I think Ben has the biggest example of this I've seen this year. Ben knew he wanted control from like before qualifiers, and it worked out for him really well. So know what you want, show it off, make sure the judges know that you want it, and they'll see it and they'll give it to you. And yeah, I can't think of 2 more. So
Yeah, your 2 more tips are just 2 more tips. Yeah, awesome. All right.
super short.
Keep it short. Keep it short, keep it sweet. 2 more tips. All right. And I'm gonna finish off with one more thing. So, and this is not like really talked about before, but I don't know if you guys notice, Timothy, Sid, and Ben are all really good friends, and I think one thing that you should definitely take away from all 3 of them is collaboration. I think that's very understated. Is that even though they're on different teams, a lot of like talks on Discord or quick chats, funny like memories or whatever. It's really important for teams because you can generally take away a lot of stuff, from just general open brainstorming or discussion. That doesn't mean every single idea goes to every single team. It just means that when you're free or have some free time and when you're just hanging out with teams, openly brainstorming or talking about your robot isn't the worst thing in the world because you're definitely going to take away a lot of it. Because I know I've learned a lot from these 3 teams, like in the ultimate goal seasons. So
And sorry, I don't want to add too much, but I think people talk a lot about how like North Carolina kind of became like this one of the best regions out of basically nowhere. That's just because like there's quite a few teams in North Carolina that are just talking to each other a ton.
Yeah.
So like to other people, it's like some teams get out of nowhere. We knew this was gonna happen. We've been talking to these people. We see the kind of hours they're putting in. You know they're gonna be really good. But I would say just reach out to the teams around you because that's how all of us got to such a high level. We all just like learned from other teams and worked on our own stuff.
Yep, healthy competition.
I have a cool story about that. So I know with Pyro, we've done a lot of collaboration stuff, which has helped both of us. So most of my outreach, a lot of it has been with Ben, in fact.
Almost all of my
yeah.
outreach.
Which is super cool. And then I know we've helped each other a lot with portfolio and control and just going through the season, which has been super cool to have like another person who's going through the same thing, who's not on your team and has like a different perspective. It's really helpful, and I
Yep.
definitely recommend it, as everyone said.
All right, that's your 3rd tip. Awesome. So this has been a great episode, guys. Definitely one of the like funniest things I've ever hosted. And a quick shout out to Davey and Kate. I know they couldn't make it today, but hopefully we can see some more stuff from them in the future. But with that being said, I think that's all for today. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on this late, especially, and we'll see you all later.
But
Yeah.